Okay, we're going to another episode of On the Wrist from Off the Cuff. Today we have a really controversial release for you guys from the brand Seiko. A little about them. They're founded back in 1881. They are Japanese in origin and have factories throughout Asia. They cover all market segments from entry level to high end. In terms of the type of watch, you can clearly see this is a dive watch. Some key common characteristics in this language you're looking for a diver. Of course, you're going to want water resistance. Typically with some type of screw down crown. You're going to see this tough, legible with a dive time bezel, and a dive extension is always nice if on bracelets. This is their new release for 2024, the Prospex SJE101 Marinemaster. It's a premium, modern reinterpretation of Seiko's original diver from 1965, the legendary 62 MAS. This is actually the first global release to bear the Marinemaster name, which was originally reserved for premium JDM models, where the first Marinemaster was actually a 100-meter SPB and 005 Transocean, but most fans will recall the I believe it was 1968-ish, 6159 saturation diver inspired lines from the modern Marinemaster 300s of the 2000s. So that design language has become very synonymous with the Marinemaster name, and some people have kind of disqualified or discounted this model because it has the name but it doesn't have the 6159 design language. But as you guys now know, yes, the first Marinemaster actually was a 100-meter Transocean watch, which actually was quartz and titanium and looked nothing like the Marinemaster 300. This is also the first Seiko diver to ever feature a screw caseback with a display window, and the first production model that uses Seiko's new slimline 6L37 movement, which debuted in the limited SJE093 62 MAS reissue. These go for $2,800. That's full MSRP. I sourced this through Belmont Watches. Big shout out to them. And of course, guys, when you are buying Seikos, typically you're not paying full retail, so keep that in mind. So with all that said, let's go ahead, zoom the camera out, get this piece in hand, and take a closer look. Okay, now before we dive in, just a couple of quick comparisons we just have to get out of the way, and that we should address before we dive into the details of the SJE101. First off, guys, let's talk about it. This here is the SLA039. It's the granddaddy of the Marinemaster in terms of its design inspirations. This is a reissue of the 6159 saturation diver, the original high beat saturation diver that inspired what many know as that Marinemaster design language, guys. It's monoblock case, very thick. Hey, this watch still exists. It's very expensive. It's the most expensive high-end dive watch you can buy from Seiko. Yes, even more expensive than their spring drive divers. That's how expensive it is. And they still exist, guys. If you want this, they didn't kill off this design language at all. It still exists. It's more abundant than ever. You have SPB Marinemaster 200s, you have SLA Marinemaster 200s and Marinemaster 300s, and then you even have SNR Prospex LX models with spring drive movements, and all across different price ranges. 1K around for the SPBs, 2,800 to 6,800 for the SLAs with 8L movements, and then with the SNRs 5,000 to 6,000. So again, these are still abundant. This case, nothing that the SJE did killed off this watch or this design. So yeah, now that that's out of the way, let's move on to the next piece. All right, so here we go. Pretty universally loved, the SLA017, a grail watch for many, and to include myself, guys. Here is the side-by-side comparison of the reissue and, of course, the reimagining. Similar but quite different. You can see definitely a bit smaller as in terms of the dial opening and then the bezel width. Also, when we take a look here side by side, really the main thickness is going to be the case back, and that is due to that thinner movement. Same goes for that SJE093 recent reissue. But everything else in terms of, comparing these side by side, yes, this is going to be a little bit more pedestrian in terms of its execution, but that's kind of was the assignment, right? That's what they wanted to do, create it premium, but they didn't try to make it fanciful or luxurious. They just wanted to recreate a very nice premium recreation of their original dive watch. Here, they are definitely doing a lot of things that people asked for in terms of adding complexity, really flexing their chops, right? In terms of, look at these bevels, and again, that is really beautifully done and very excellent. So these side by side, yes, this is still a beautiful watch. I love it. It's going to be forever one of my grails that I feel fortunate enough to have attained. But in terms of the build, the SLA versus this SJE, very similar, although, of course, this one isn't trying as hard. I think here they've really challenged themselves in a lot of different ways, which we'll get into. But first, let's again get through the rest of these comparisons. All right, so hey, here we have it. Yes, an SKX mod, right? My ultimate SKX. This is just to show you what people have been wanting, including myself, right? Longtime Seiko fans have wanted. We loved, of course, the comfort and the aesthetic of the Jubilee bracelet. We just wanted one that was built a little bit more solid, right? But still had that complexity, still had that comfort. But one thing that makes this especially a good comparison is, hey, here's the clasp. A lot of people are upset that, hey, it didn't even get the Marinemaster clasp. All right, look, I have the Marinemaster clasp. I paid extra to put it on here and secure it. And I just a few things to get out of the way. Guys, this does not have a quick adjust micro or quick adjust clasp with micro. This is manual micro adjustment holes. That's how you adjust it. This is a ratcheting dive suit extension, which is cool. Yes, it's very cool, but you're not, when your wrist swells, you're not letting that out. Like, that is a terrible way to use that. That is completely unsightly and honestly unacceptable. If that's, if in a pinch, sure, you get one extra click out or two, great. That's fine that you can use that for you. But in reality, guys, this is for, this is exactly what it's for, is ratcheting. And if you're thinking they should have engineered something better, then that's just silly, because honestly, even the Grand Seiko watches of today, their divers are using a variation of this clasp. They haven't done it for Grand Seiko. Why would they? And that's $10,000 watches. Haven't done it yet. They're not going to do it for a $2,800 watch. So what they did use is this right here. Check this out, okay? Slim turtle, right? Boom, slimline clasp for the slimline watch. Makes perfect sense, right? When you look at the profile, you want something that's going to be very balanced. You don't want something that's going to be overly bulky and chunky. And it makes sense, guys. It makes sense to keep this balance, to not have a big, oversized, overly complex, ultimately, hey, this is for something for somebody to wear and enjoy. And if you do need to go diving, you do have that extension, or you always have the choice, thanks to, of course, drilled lugs. You can swap this out very easily. 20 millimeter lug width versus the 19 of the SLA model. So makes it even easier and more friendly. But with that, let's get into the last comparison here, guys. Okay, this is where I think that a lot of you are going to really, I feel like, tune in, because this is where the comparison, I think, is probably best. Okay, so the SLA is released 017, everybody loves it. And then this is the attainable version that's a little bit new and upgraded. They've added bevels, they've added some different proportions to really modernize this and make this very wearable and competitive. Now, this was originally released for around, I think, $1,200. You can get it for less. Of course, it's a Seiko. You can always get for less than retail. Now, yeah. So this caught on like wildfire. People loved it. I mean, they're comparing this watch to Tudor Black Bays and Zen U50s, right? And yeah, this is a much better watch. Ultimately, it's it's better. It costs more, yes, and it should, because they don't want to cannibalize the SPB line. This is a very good watch line. This is a great watch. This watch is not obsolete now by any means. This is a fantastic watch for a lot of wrists, but ultimately there have been people that have wanted a more premium, updated version that still hit every wicket, still had a bracelet. You know, I mean, geez, that SLA039 that I have doesn't even have a bracelet. It's the most expensive Seiko diver you can buy, and it only comes on a silicone strap. All right, so for that fact, now you're getting something that is thoroughly modernized, but still has all of that Seiko heritage baked in. You're still getting that fully in-house flavor. Even the aesthetics there, guys, they're even still very much traditionally Seiko, even by adding some, texturing to the dial. It's what they're known for. This plank texturing, no, it's not a texture that they invented, but it absolutely makes sense in terms of being competitive within the market by just adding some things to differentiate it. And again, now instead of saying SPB143, you could say new Marinemaster, right? This is going to be a lot more approachable for a lot more folks in terms of understanding and appreciating the timepiece, because now it has the name back, and that's just something very cool. So with all that out of the way, why don't we just get back into the real details about this particular watch? Okay, guys, into the details and on the wrist. You guys can see on my 7.5-inch wrist, this wears pretty beautifully, honestly. That 38.5 millimeter diameter, that's the case diameter, but the width across the bezel itself is about 39.3. And although this is on the smaller side and sizes are trending down, if you do like a larger watch, again, there's tons of options out there for you still, but I think this just packs a ton of visual interest thanks to everything they have going on with this case and with this bracelet. There's definitely, again, although it's small, it's still modernized, which I can absolutely appreciate, guys. So you are also going to have a 12.3 millimeter thickness there, or should I say thinness, and that really works, guys. It just looks fantastic. The lug to lug on here is going to be 46.7, and then this is all stainless steel. It does, of course, have brush and polish finishing with their proprietary super hard coating, often known as Dia Shield. Now, the crystal is a dual curved box sapphire, so you can see here that even at a very harsh angle, still going to be quite legible. No milkiness or anything like that to be found. This looks really fantastic. It does have an inner AR coating that is clear, so it's not going to be adding a lot of different hues or anything like that when you're looking at it at angle. The bezel is really nicely done, guys. Ooh. Still feels like a Seiko bezel. Nice and dampened. Still quite clicky. Lines up great. Now, speaking of alignment, guys, here's something. Let me give it a quick little wipe here off camera. Here's something that Seiko did that I can really appreciate. Look at the bezel insert and then look at the bezel teeth and the grips. Look at the 30. Do you see how the grip line is carved out? The 30 fits perfectly. The 45, the 15, the 12 o'clock pip. Take a look. This is a QC person's nightmare, but they did that. They challenged themselves. They stepped up and they created something that you could easily see if it was misaligned, right? Because now every one of these marks around this bezel insert have to line up for you to have this aesthetic and have it work. And it does. It all lines up. It's wild, right? Another thing, some of you aren't too happy about this bezel grip. Why is it so toothy and this and that, right? You guys can see it's quite thin. So when you're going to be handling this bezel, you're going to be touching more so the top versus the sides, right? You're going to get a little bit of the side, but you're going to get some of the top. So that's where it makes sense to have that tactile engagement when it comes to you interacting with this bezel, is to go ahead and place your fingers on the grips on top, guys. It just makes sense. This isn't something where they said, oh, let's make it more blingy for no reason, or let's copy something else. you know, these coin grips are compared to a lot of different services. And for me, this one here, it's just executed really, really well. And I can't really be too upset with that. You know, getting into the dial itself is very, very nice. Let's actually get it off the wrist and take a closer look. All right, guys, so you can see raised indices, plank textured dial, date neatly tucked away at the 4.5 o'clock with a color matched disc. Again, I can't be too upset about it, especially considering that I've praised watches that did the same thing. My Slim Turtle has the same type of punch out, right? It also, of course, is still Diver's 200 meters of water resistant. It is ISO compliant, which means they're testing it for more than 200 meters, for 250 actually. You're getting drilled lugs. Look at the lugs. Guys, look at that. Beautifully done. They didn't have to, but they did. They went the extra mile. They're doing more, and I can appreciate that. And then you get into this movement that debuted in the SJE093, you know, the kind of second coming of the 62 MAS reissue. And yeah, and now you're actually able to see it because this is the first screw down case back, display back diver that Seiko's ever done. So there's a lot of firsts that are happening here. This is the first production model that's using this movement, and it's great. I really dig that. I dig that you can see it. It has, of course, 45 hours of power reserve, smooth 4 Hz sweep, so you're getting that 28,800 vibration per hour beat rate, which is fantastic. A lot of these other competitors that are out there, even more high end, guys, even when you look at an Omega, they've lowered the beat rate down to 3.5 Hertz versus the full 4 Hertz. So, and then you get down into some of the even more affordable watches, right? Like in the Powermatic lines and whatnot, whether it be Tissot, Certina, Hamilton, those watches are down to 3 Hertz. So that is not really competitive against this. No, it doesn't have a super extended power reserve. But, I mean, there's plenty of watches that don't, that have in-house movements that people aren't really complaining. Most movements don't have extended power reserves, but everyone's just happy that they're slim and that they're in-house. Hey, you know what else is slim and in-house? The movement in here, this 6L movement has made its way into Creedor watches, which are made to go to toe-to-toe with the very best that the European watch manufacturers have to offer, right? So that is something to be said, that yes, it's not the most glamorous, whatnot. It doesn't have the connotations to, let's say, Grand Seiko. But in terms of Creedor, hey, this is a very high level movement that has been used in very expensive watches and movements and very expensive watches that are even third party that have used essentially clones of this movement architecture, right? Because the Soprod movement is a copy of this movement. The A10 and the variations built off of that are a copy of the 4L, which is, you know, it's precursor to the 6L. So, and those watches, they've been in watches $3,000, $4,000, $5,000 watches. So you know, again, now you have all of that technology, all of that slimness in something that is all fully in-house. Even the aesthetic, the design language, everything. This is a little bit more of a, let's say, a bullet style layout, kind of half bullet, half Jubilee. And I think it looks great. Ties in, you're getting brush, you're getting polish. It's very nice satin brushing here. Very small, short links. Guys, if you ever experienced a Marinemaster 300, the bracelet wasn't great, okay? It was one of the reasons why a lot of people didn't buy them, and it's a reason why many people still don't buy them. They have very long links, okay? It's a cool ratchet and clasp, it's a cool case, all that stuff. It's still legendary, but this has very short links. Essentially, they're about the length of a half link. So when you see this, don't be too scared, because having these two positions of micro adjustment, it's all you really need. One, the links are already all essentially half links. You can already dial in the fit from using these and then zero it in with that. You don't need more, right? It's stripping things away. There's not a lot of frivolous things. Yes, they wanted to do things to make it more complex, more handsome, you know, more expensive feeling, because it is a more expensive watch and it should feel a bit more expensive. So yeah, there's definitely a lot to unpack here, but let's go ahead, transfer over into some loom shots, the light transition, and closing thoughts. All right, let's go ahead and hit the lights here. Hey, as you can see, Lumibrite lume, and it's applied very thickly and generously and very sharply. I can appreciate even the aesthetic in the daytime situation. Also, one thing I forgot to mention is that it has a shielded lume pip, which I love, which my SLA017 doesn't have. But man, look at this. I always like to work in a bit of low light transition because you're not always going to be out in the middle of a field enjoying direct sunlight. A lot of times you're going to find yourself coming in and out of buildings, walking underneath overhangs, or just hanging out underneath the shade of a tree. So it is nice to see what these colors, textures, and finishes render like in less than optimal lighting. It may even include a bit of harsh lighting, which typically could expose any types of production defects. But all you're going to see here is a watch that has considered the low light transition, guys. Look at this. It is gorgeous. So many different points of contrast, whether they be within the finishing, brushed or polished, or the satinization, or the textures, or the multiple levels in terms of the fact that this watch has a lot of contours, angles, cuts, and even some smooth sections, deep luster in terms of the high polish, and a beautiful, even, very nice fine hairline satin brush there. So very, very, very cool. And I dig this one, guys. And I get it. It's controversial. People don't like it. Everybody wants everything to be marketed towards them. It needs to be all things to all people. That's just never been what Seiko's been good at, guys. I mean, if it's anything that really is a carryover from the Marinemaster that you all know and love in terms of the Marinemaster 300, right? Let's not even talk about the fact that there's been tuna Marinemasters as well. Nobody's upset this doesn't look like a tuna. But that was not a perfect watch. That was not an everyday watch for every wrist. This is something that actually is very close. That's what a lot of people ask for. Things like thinness, see-through case backs, a priority for usable aspects and comfort and build quality and complication. So on the wrist, super wearable, it screams quality, and it is slotted between your standard SPB and SLA lineups. But I will say, again, it's not off by much, right? And in a lot of ways, it excels past a lot of the SLA options. Now, in terms of model variants, it's also available in a kind of light blue, dark blue combination, the SJE109, as well as the limited edition white dial with a stainless steel bezel insert, SJE097. In terms of comparable models, this is a well-spec'd competitor to Tag Heuer's popular Aquaracer dive line, right? 2850 MSRP, right? With similar specs, guys. But also, I think it's the spiritual parallel to the Tudor Pelagos 39, right? Not as much as a direct competitor to the $4,700 diver, which is, good amount more expensive than 28, all right? But in terms of it being quite divisive, right? In terms of a release for enthusiasts, while a clear winner for newer customers who've enjoyed the classic aesthetics, but previously held off due to the larger sizes, right? And that's not just casuals, but also even enthusiasts, right? Some enthusiasts will appreciate the unique feature set, while others won't be able to get over the omission of certain details they felt were key to the Pelagos or Marinemaster namesake, right? When you think about the Pelagos, they took away the cool clasp, they took away the slope chapter ring, they made it simple, they made it seem a little bit too much like something else, that it wasn't, its quirkier, more feature-rich self, right? Hey, that's a pretty similar story. And the nice thing is, it'll be those things for other people, right? It's not for everyone. It's not meant to be everyone's one watch. This isn't that, but it could be for a small segment of people. And again, it's going to tip people over who maybe were hesitant to purchase, who've been looking for a watch like this because it didn't exist before within the Seiko lineup, and now it brings that, right? So there's a lot of people that could be complete watch enthusiasts, dive watch enthusiasts, that just haven't had a Seiko that they've really liked. This could be that. And for the people that love other more traditional Seikos, guess what? You still have a huge abundance of those options. There's reissue after reimagining. So this is not hurting any of that. If anything, with its price point, it's making sure to preserve those options for you. If you're so vehement and adamant about the purity and the perfection of those watches, this not competing against them in terms of price also helps ensure that those watches that you do love that aren't this watch continue to be made, guys. So for me, the bottom line is, if this was a slim 39mm Grand Seiko diver, yeah, it might be maybe 20 or 30% nicer. It's really not the finish, it's more the fit, the tight tolerances that separate Grand Seiko from, let's say, King Seiko, from Presage, from Prospex, some of the higher end Prospex watches. It's really more the fit. The finish is, Zaratsu is Zaratsu, right? So this is pretty close, but it would also cost 2 to 3 times as much if this was a Grand Seiko diver. But I honestly think if they would have just put a Grand Seiko on that dial, people would be thrilled for it. They wouldn't be trying to compare it to anything else. They would just love it for what it is, right? So, again, if you must have that signature 6159 aesthetic, you have plenty of other options to choose from throughout the SPB line at around $1,000, right? Even now they have the GMT models, right? So a little bit above 1,000 that are going to have 6R powered movements. The SLA line, where you're going to have 8L powered movements from a 2,800 to 6,800 range, right? Or the SNR spring drive powered movements from $5,000 to $6,000. So if you really want that traditional quote unquote Marinemaster style that you're used to, it's all still available. It's more available than ever. They give you more options than ever. And this is not one of those options. And that's okay, right? So that's all I have to say on this. Actually, I probably have more. I'm sure there's going to be a lot of still people in the comments. It should have been this. It should have been that. Compare it to, guys, comparing it to a Tudor watch, a Tudor watch should have more value, because that's literally its mission statement since the day Tudor was made. It's meant to be a cheaper alternative to a desirable product. It was never meant to be the desirable product. It's always been a cheaper alternative to Rolex. Here, Seiko have actually competed with Rolex. They have outdone Rolex. They have beat Rolex in certain innovations, especially within the dive watch space in terms of, L-shaped gaskets, saturation. Like, there's so many great things that Seiko has done. And ultimately, they haven't done it by being a cheaper alternative to something. Yes, maybe within the last 30 years, there's been a lot of people that have, hey, I'll buy a Seiko as a cheap alternative to something else. But that was never their ethos. That was never within their DNA. Their DNA has always been to create a fantastic product, right? And again, a somewhat polarizing product as well, right? It's marketed because Seiko only is Seiko, right? Yes, it has Grand Seiko, it has Presage, it has King Seiko, it has Astron. They have a bunch of different lines. Spirit, Essentials Collection. There's all these other Seikos, but at the end of the day, they're all Seikos, and people judge them that way, right? The Swatch Group has all these brands, and nobody gets mad when a Tissot isn't an Omega, because they accept them as different, although they're kind of the same thing at this point, right? In terms of the ownership. So that is a distinct advantage that Swiss watches have. Somebody buys a Tissot, they're fine that it's not a Longines. Somebody buys a Longines and they're fine that it's not an Omega. But somebody buys a Seiko and they're upset that it's not a Grand Seiko. They buy the one Seiko model and they're mad that it doesn't have the feature set of another Seiko model for the same price or less. Yes, everything would be great if it was better and cheaper. I could just go on forever about this. It is what it is. I'm not going to convince anybody. If you don't like this watch, that's fine. I'm fine with that. I enjoy this watch. And I have, for me, within my collection, if you guys have been fans of this channel, and in terms of even watches I've just reviewed, let alone the ones that I own, I've handled and owned some of the best Seiko divers that there are, whether they be newer or vintage, or even some neo-vintage references that I think are some of the best, most wearable Seiko divers and significant Seiko divers that you can have. So, this one's still... It's a good one for me. No, it's not for everybody. It's going to be a bit expensive for a lot of folks, but there's a lot of things that are too expensive for me. But I would probably only be upset that they were too expensive if I wanted it bad enough, right? If I didn't want it, there's so many watches that are expensive that I don't want, so I don't give them a second thought. I don't go on reviews and then try to get in the comments section and convince the reviewer that the watch they have is crap, or convince an owner that the watch they bought is overpriced trash, because I don't want the watch. If I don't want the watch, I'm not spending another thought on it, right? Let's see how that fares for you guys on this video, though, right? Will people be able to just enjoy not having this watch, or will they only be pleased once they try to convince me to not enjoy it myself? I don't know. It's just such a controversial piece. Don't get me started on how much I enjoy my Blancpain Swatch watch. That one also very controversial. So 2024 is already working out to be quite a wild ride. But let me know what you guys all think down in the comments below. If you like the video, please do a like, and if you haven't already, please subscribe for more content just like this. Thanks, guys.